Hello and welcome to the fourth Senatus Populusque. Pronounced perfectly. Yes, I know. You don't need to comment again about my pronunciation. I know that it is spot on and you are so impressed by my just impeccable and unimpeachable pronunciation of a language I don't fucking speak. Right, let's move on. So this one is the 24th to the 30th of August, and we have three more suggestions for us to review and rate and read and all that kind of stuff. So the first off, one is Chloe Peck's Demand, Market Control and War, a trade good overhaul suggestion. Alright, let's have a little read of this one then. So, a preface. Why am I informed? This is atypical, but I would like to preface this by saying that my recommendations here are informed by my enthusiasm for historical trade, but more importantly, my degree in economics, which I hope has allowed me to make suggestions that are useful abstractions. This also informed by discussions from other forum users, other suggestions, and particularly the YouTube channel by Lord Lambert. Diddums! I didn't read this before I went in. Thank you, Chloe Peck. That's awesome. Also, shout out to Chloe. I'm sure if I'm being shouted out here, then maybe she watches, or maybe he. I don't know. Names don't really mean anything nowadays, but yeah, thank you very much. I believe this information should help explain why I'm making the suggestions I am, and to help you make connections on how this impacts other mechanics in the game and how this could better reflect the realities of antiquity. So, regarding things now. As it stands, trade in Imperator succeeds in two major ways. It offers decisions about your state that have substantial impact, and its importance grows as the game progresses, with more trade routes becoming available due to growing citizen and nobility populations, and more trade goods becoming available due to ever more slaves and infrastructure, as well as colonization of unsettled lands. However, alright, before we go into the however, agreed, you do get more trade routes, you do get more trade goods, you can do more trade. Let's see what the however is. The trade system fails to deliver a satisfying representation of what trade did in antiquity, how it impacted war, diplomacy, and commerce, and just by how tedious it is. Solid agree on everything so far. As I've made a trade suggestion video myself already, that you can find if you look at the suggestions playlists in there. But yeah, I don't think it does what trade really was in antiquity. I don't think it's realistic. And especially late game trade is incredibly tedious, like so horribly tedious. Just an ability to say, mate, I want you to trade things, and like the governor of the place can choose, and he'd be better or worse at doing it based on what kind of civic level he was. That'd be something nice, just so I don't have to micromanage every single trade route. And there's, when you get fairly large in the late game, there's literally hundreds of fucking trade routes. Ain't nobody got time for that. Right, let's move on. That was awful accent. I'm sorry, that was horrible. So the issues: a trade fails to be a reason to go to war. I disagree with this because it can be. I've brought this example up before. It's the example I brought up in my review when the game first came out. Iron, when you're playing in Syracuse, you need iron to fight Rome, so that's a reason to go to war with other countries, so you can get yourself a source of iron. That's it. That's my reason. But yeah, very few reasons. I think it's not enough of a reason. In like the vast majority of cases, it's not enough. Demand is totally unrepresented. Yeah, agreed. Having 2 in your capital is optimal, no more or less. Unless it's food, but yes. Goods travel through territories with no benefit or permission from the holder when ports are critical to enabling trade over distances. Agreed, that was one of the big parts of my suggestion video. You can supply an entire army of heavy infantry with 1 iron, have magically superior units with 2, and therefore it's irrelevant, or thereafter it's irrelevant. Yeah, so about this one, there is actually a mod made by a good friend of mine, Starkitect, which does actually solve this particular issue. it was something that I spoke to him about before he made it and sort of made some suggestions on it. But yeah, the mod in question is this one here. It's called Strategic Resources, made by Starchitect. It's got a lot of people subscribing, a lot of people favoriting. It's great. So basically, the gist is you can no longer have 100 cohorts from a single iron mine. Resources beyond merely the first of a type now have a real strategic value and can be vital to your expansion interests. Each strategic good can support 2 to 5 cohorts depending on cohort type and your military traditions. I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but yeah, this is really, really good. If you have a deficit, then you get a penalty to your army. Because, you know, if you don't have enough iron to supply your army, maybe 20% of the army is missing swords, so they fight 20% worse, etc. Really, really interesting system that I think everyone should go and give a shot. You know, it works in the UI as well. It looks pretty good. I wonder if he's got anything for being overburdened. Have they got any screenshots for being overburdened, I wonder? 3225, yes, the shortage of timber will increase the cost to build new ships. There you go. Probably because you have to import it or something, I don't know. But yeah, shortage of horses giving those nasty penalties that you can get over just by, you know, making more, getting more of it. So yeah, this is a really, really good mod. I'm just going to give it a favorite as well. I don't know why I hadn't already, but yeah. If you're interested in, you know, fixing that particular issue, then go and check out Strategic Resources. And if any of the mod devs, not mod devs, the game devs, Arheo or any of the other guys are watching, maybe go and have a look at this, play around with it, see if it's something you enjoy, and maybe, you know, just sort of like sneaky implementation. That'd be nice, cool, you know, maybe have a think of it. Anyway, moving on. The AI arbitrarily ends routes, leading to trade being a chore to fix every once in a while. I don't know if they end routes. Do they end routes? I don't think they do. I think they just lose the ability to trade them away. Right? Is that not it? Do they actually specifically go in and cancel trade? Because I don't know if that's true. I think more accurately they just, you know, if they have a civil war or they get sieged and, you know, or a slave is moved or something along those lines and they just can't support the extra trade good and you draw the short end of the stick and your trade route dies. I feel like that's more accurate. I might be wrong though. Maybe they do just end trade routes. I don't know. Non-capital trade goods are left unfilled due to tedium and lack of impact in comparison. Agreed. Goods in the capital are magically more important. They should be important because the capital is the urban center of your empire, its most populous area, not because it magically affects your whole state. Agreed. Having a monopoly on a trade good has no impact on your income from it. I'd never thought of it, but yeah, that's true. Internal trade routes are bad. Agreed. Trade is sticky. You can't trade away things you buy, even though it was critical to powers like Carthage. Critical to Egypt as well. A big part of the Egyptian trade was buying all the fucking spices and stuff from India and then selling it to Rome. That was the internal trade that Rome had going on, and it's where a lot of their wealth was from. They imported from India into or through Egypt and then sold into Rome silks and spices and all this kind of stuff, and it made them fabulously wealthy. Yeah, no, this is definitely an issue that I bring up in my video as well. So, on to the solutions. Armies are limited in size by the amount of strategic resources you have access to. I don't think hard caps would be a good idea. I prefer Starchitect's mod solution. The impact of goods is based on demand. Exceeding demand has diminishing returns, while not keeping up can cause problems. Yes, agreed, that'd be good. Goods are limited to be traded to adjacent states or across the sea. I would say that if you have trade access, and maybe a new diplomatic option, trade access, would also be an option to go through adjacent states. and trade access would come with a cost. It would be like, all right, I pay you 0.5 ducats a month, and I've now got trade access. Something like that. I don't know. Yeah. Greater automated options for trade. Agreed. Solid agree. Removal of capital surplus bonus and greater impact of goods by default. It's interesting because they removed the surplus bonus from... Sorry, they removed the export bonus. They also, I believe, removed the surplus bonus from regular provinces. No, that's wrong because they do have it. Or do they? No, they do. Yeah, they do. They removed something. I think it was just the export bonus, actually. But yeah, removal of that is an interesting one. I wouldn't be against it, but we'd have to see. Market control being the primary supplier of a good lends to increased prices, modelled as an increase in commerce income for the exporter and a reduced income for the importer. And no longer unable to trade goods you've purchased from elsewhere. Good stuff. Alright. So, strategic resource... Actually, with this, all you really need to do is, firstly, yes, allow that. But also have it so that you can trade away something that you only have one of. Because then you can, you know, import spices from India and then export it again. You don't have to import 2 and then export 1. Like that, definitely, I think, yeah, that'd be good. So, army-related goods should have a greater impact on the composition of your armies, especially with the removal of capital surplus bonus. Currently, 2 iron is all you need as Rome, the rest traded away, because your ever-growing swarm of legionaries is supplied. Yeah, no, it's true. It's just true. I mean, iron does have a capital surplus stacking bonus, or it used to, of... I think it was manpower. But I think that was actually the other thing that got removed, is the stacking bonus in the capital. Or no, it didn't. I don't even remember. I've literally just had the game open doing my Empress campaign. I've completely forgotten already. But yeah, this is all you need to make Rome painful. Yeah. Where am I? Sure, you can only build them in areas with iron, but that's only an issue before you build them. Instead, you should need enough iron to supply your army. If you intend to double the amount of heavy infantry in your ranks, you'd best double your supply of iron, because you'll need it. The limitation should be lenient, perhaps varying for each resource, but 10 units per resource seems reasonable. This serves to encourage expansion and trade for powers like Rome. If you want to keep your army growing, you need to expand and get more iron. And Syracuse will need to do more to ensure access to 2 iron to match Rome, and perhaps cutting off Rome's supply, which is difficult considering Rome's supply of 2 iron comes from Latium, will dismantle their armies far more effectively than fighting them head-on will. This will require rebalancing of units, which benefit from surplus bonus of discipline, of course, but those units are already rather good even without the bonus. True. This change also serves to encourage the use of light infantry and archers, even for nations which will otherwise want to rely on cavalry or other elite units. Yes, agreed. There are very few archers and light infantry in armies other than for the AI, which makes the AI trivial to defeat. Yeah, no, agreed there. Agreed. As an aside, heavy cavalry should be rebalanced to be even more superior, but require both iron and horses to produce. Pretty sure this is something that I have recommended very, very many times. Main choice between heavy infantry and light cavalry or heavy cavalry armies would be forced. Love it. Alright, so I really like this. Like I said, it's something that I've suggested before as well. Heavy cavalry needing iron and horses and then just being fucking amazing. It has been something I've suggested quite a few times. I wonder if this is where they've got the idea from, or it's just an adjacent idea that we've both had. Because it makes sense. It makes sense. A heavy cavalry is like the way I think of it, it's like a cataphract. It's like a heavy infantryman on a motherfucking horse. Makes sense, right? Anyway, let's move on to happiness goods. Goods like precious metals, dyes, olives, and woad should be demanded by your population. In simple terms, at least one of each happiness good would be demanded by X amounts of population. We've reduced happiness if this is not met. Meeting this gives maximum bonus, and exceeding it produces diminishing returns. I've made the suggestion as well. Yeah, no, agreed. I agree, because I've made this suggestion like almost word for word. It's fairly similar to the way that it works right now, where, you know, you get happiness for giving the pops the goods that they want, but it's coming at it from a different angle, right? Instead of this is their base happiness and you're increasing it, it's this is the happiness that they are happy at, and you're trying to go up to meet that demand. It's just a different way of thinking about it, and I think the suggestion that I had for this was around before Menander came out, before the new trade system was announced. It's been something I've thought for quite some time, so yeah, it's pretty cool. I like it. So, for an example, Province A has X slaves, while Province B has 2 X slaves. Province A demands a single supply of olives, while Province B will demand 2. Sending A 2 olives will have reduced effect, while sending B 1 olive won't entirely appease them. Yeah. What X should do... what X is should be determined by the type of pop, of course, and made clear to the player. Nobles will have greater weight, as they should, while a city could reasonably have a huge number of slaves who demand relatively little. This has the effect of encouraging thoughtful distributions of goods to all your population centers, and also discouraging massive cities, who will demand more resources than you could supply, encouraging a balance between number of trade routes and your population. That should make medium-sized provinces ideal for most of the game. Additionally, this opens up new modifiers for population impact on demand, which could be a powerful reward for missions and building investments. In many ways, this system already exists in the game for food, though this is not variable between population types. I think it is, isn't it? Don't slaves require less food than the rest of the pops? I feel like that's true, but again, I can't remember. Terrible, terrible memory. Also, you know, discouraging massive cities is something I'm always going to be in favor of, because fuck megacities. Alright, moving on. Easier management. To improve accessibility, reduce decision fatigue, and make it more likely that players will fill their trade routes, provinces can be directed to simply purchase X of a good whenever available, and notify a player that that is not true. Notify the player when that is not true. Okay. Damn. I don't know why my brain farted there. Provinces will be automatically buy from a different state when the previous route becomes unavailable, such as when war is declared. I would say less this. I don't want to click on every single province and say, when you can, I want you to buy X. I want like a feel, right? An area of things that I would like them to do. And it'll be at the regional area. So maybe I can set the regional trade policy to be, I want you to trade to make my pops happy. Or I want you to trade to make strategic goods. Because the more strategic goods I get, this region will be able to build more and better troops and supply them with the previous system we talked about. That kind of thing. Trade policies rather than microing trade. Purchase this when you can, please. And your governors would be better or worse at getting trade goods based on their civic stat. You know, if you got 10 civic stat, you get the best goods and you get the best prices. But if he's bad, then maybe there's going to be a cost for that over and above what it usually would be, and maybe he's, instead of purchasing, you know, something to make his nobles happy, accidentally buys fucking furs or leather or some shit that he doesn't need. Something like that would be, I think, really a better option than, you know, every single province click on it. I want you to buy grain when you can. That's just no, that's shit idea, I think. Not a shit idea. It's better than what we currently have, but at the same time, I think it's removing a lot of micro, but leaving in more micro than I want. Alright, so additionally, players will be able to pay a moderate amount of money to have a state stop trading with another power and instead trade with them, with a lockout to prevent abuse. This primarily serves to give players a way to stop the AI from arbitrarily locking them out of goods they need, but it can also be used to deprive enemies of goods like iron. This will of course lead to an opinion penalty from the state whose trade you subverted, and possibly even a reason for them to declare war. Agreed, that would be lovely, thank you very much. So, market control. Rather than having a fixed price for goods, prices should be modified by the forces of suppliers. Having an overabundance of good should modify its value downwards for the exporter, as they have to compete with other states, while being the sole exporter of a rare good should see its value skyrocket. Rather than simply tying this to supply, however, goods that are dominantly traded by a single power will have their price increased if they only had a few supply. For example, say that Rome, Crete, and Sparta are the only suppliers of iron in the Mediterranean. Sparta and Crete have 1 iron each available, but Rome has 5. The price will be treated as if only 3 iron were available, not 7, because Rome is able to fix the prices due to the fact that if you want iron, you will have reduced options, and Rome only has to compete with 2 other powers. If Rome is to conquer Sparta and Crete, Rome will be selling iron as if only 1 supply existed, because monopolizing the good, Rome gains price-fixing power. Alright, that's really, really good. That's really cool. I like that a lot. It's not based on the amount of the good, it's based on the amount of countries that have the good. That is important. That is very important. That's a good thing to think about. Mechanically, this would manifest as the exporter gaining increased commerce income from the good, while the importer gets reduced income. Conversely, the supply being high would balance the benefit between importer and exporter. This would drive conflict in 2 directions. Establishing monopolies will grant you increased economic benefits, while countries will have serious motivation to declare war on monopoly holders because of how much less money they make. An example of this will be Rome and Egypt. In the game as is, Rome would only ever conquer Egypt because of the population, because trading that grain is more profitable than internal trade. But because Egypt has so much more grain, the cost would be higher, and Rome could conquer Egypt so that it benefits more from sending grain up to Rome, or even forces Egypt to collapse into several small states that it can trade with instead. Yeah, no, I like it. There's more reasons, of course, to conquer Egypt more than just the population. Although I guess my reasons would be more research, more manpower, more money, which comes from population, so I guess that's accurate then. It is just the population then. And the clay. Gotta love the clay. Anyway, a Silk Road, finally. So, goods should additionally be able to be traded from province to province from far-off areas, consuming multiple trade routes, and not being beneficial quite yet. This is a steep cost with great reward. Selling even a single rare good like dyes in areas where dyes are unavailable, for example, into inland Iberia or Gaul, will generate massive income. Because powers should only be able to trade with far-off places across the sea and not land, even if you don't have a monopoly on the good in the Mediterranean, if you have the coastline of Iberia locked off, you can extort the powers there for greater profit, paying ever-increasing amounts, or even bridging goods across your own empire should a worthwhile decision to make if done correctly. This is important to model, as this was key to the strategies of Egypt and Carthage and would continue to be throughout history, most notably with trade powers like the Ottomans and Portugal. Solid agree. I mean, it doesn't have to be called a Silk Road. It's just basically trade. It's basically how trade worked. You move trade goods from somewhere where it's abundant to where it's less abundant. You get money for it. It doesn't just jump from one place to another. It makes some stops. Traders, the people on the boats gotta eat. They gotta sleep. Well, they can sleep on the boat, but they gotta eat and take on fresh water and stuff. And why not while you're in port? Taking on the fresh water and stuff, and having some time on dry land, maybe trade some of the wares away. That makes sense. So yeah, no, I'm in full agreement. I think the only thing I was a little bit disagreeing with was easier management. I think it can be even easier. But yeah, no, great idea, great. Chloe Peck. Awesome suggestion. Appreciate the shout out, and yeah, it's good stuff. Right, I guess we'll go on to the next one then. So the next suggestion is from Zapflawed, who got 19 votes. Thanks to his thread entitled Later End Date. I already know what I'm going to say about this one. So, To start off, replace tactics with army formations. This has nothing to do with an end date. Am I clicking the wrong thing? Yes, I am. I'm clicking... Yeah, I'm on this one. This one first. In the second position with 20 votes is... Sorry, Redemathus. I clicked on the wrong one. So replace army tactics with army formations. Let's have a look at what he says about this then. The tactics system with its rock, paper, scissors format seems intended for multiplayer, where players can second guess each other. But in single player, it really just adds micromanagement with little strategic gain. We'll go on to that in a second. I propose replacing the tactics system with a system of defined purposes and compositions for armies called formations. Alright, so first off, there is actually quite a lot of strategic gain, and it's mostly in... well, it's in single player where it's most effective, because you can pause. If you time your army so that your better general arrives to a battle one day after the battle starts, or one day after their best general enters the combat, you can then change your tactic to be the most beneficial, the one that cancels out their tactic. And if you do that, there is a massive strategic gain. It does add micromanagement, a lot of it, but I would not say it's a little strategic gain. I think it's quite a lot of strategic gain. Is it intended for multiplayer? I don't think so. I think it's just intended for a more interesting combat system. What it has led to, which I think maybe should have been brought up of as a negative, is it's changed combat, especially in multiplayer, as a system of I'm going to retreat my best general so that I can bring him back in the next day with a new tactic, and it is very strategic, and the people who can do it well are really good in multiplayer. I call it depth of generals, where you can, keep adding in better and better generals, but then when you just, I'm going to grab a mercenary, he's completely depleted because he's been in 1,000 fucking battles, but all I need to do is retreat him with 0 troops, put him back in with 0 troops, and he's changed the tactic again. And from the perspective of like watching the battle, seeing a battle just completely change on its head because a new guy came in and was able to radically change the entire like formation and tactics that that the army was using is just weird. So while I know when I was doing the observer campaigns for Imperator, I was very happy to see a lot of depth of generals because it shows a lot of skill. At the same time, it's not historical. It's not very... depth of generals isn't very deep. Let's put it that way. I ended up kind of not liking seeing it. It came very cheesy and cheap. But anyway, that's my problem with the tactics system. But let's see what his solution is. In the current system, by properly moving around tiny armies with the appropriate tactics, you can switch battles to the best tactic every time. You don't really need tiny armies, but sure. If you spend enough effort micromanaging, you will always beat the AI at this and gain a bonus. That's true. If you choose to ignore the system, then you'll randomly have a bonus or malus. It's an example of a system that adds a lot of burden to the AI for very little gameplay gain. I think I'd agree with that. But you do gain the bonus, and like I said, you will always beat the AI. That is a strategic gain. So, however, one of the strategically interesting parts of the tactics system is it encourages you to have armies with specific compositions. Formations expand on that exact idea. I don't think it does this at all. I really don't think it does this at all. Because with the tactics system, the enemy gets a negative as well as you getting a positive. So even if your positive isn't that high, even if it's like 1%, they're still getting negative 10%. So there's really no reason to really push for a certain formation or a certain army composition just for tactics. I don't think that's true. Formations expand on that idea. Formation would have a specific composition or purpose, and that armies that adhere to that formation gain bonuses and maluses. perhaps proportionally based on how closely they compositionally adhere. For example, a phalanx army would be Greek-specific formation centered on heavy infantry and would gain defensive bonuses and perhaps terrain-specific ones, like increased performance in hills and mountains. Excuse me, what? Excuse me, what? A phalanx. Increased performance in hills and mountains. No. No, absolutely not. That is not what the phalanx was good at. The phalanx was good in open, flat land with no hills at all because they sucked major testicles in hills and mountains. Any kind of undulating terrain would break up the formation, leave gaps in the formation that would not be able to fill. No, just no, that's wrong. Maybe what he's thinking of is a cliff on each side of the phalanx. Yeah, you're not getting through there. But that's not really what hills and mountains are kind of about. No, he's wrong about that, but fine. A formation could also be generic, like scouting or siege. An army focused on siege might have reduced supply footprint at the expense of extra morale damage. Okay. But an army focused on siege would have more supply because they're there for a siege. Oh no, at the expense. Okay, so it would have more supply. It would have less morale damage. All right. I don't know where you're getting really the extra like losing morale damage from. I don't really see where that's coming from, but all right. Sure. Formations could be gated by culture, technology, or military traditions, or even events. Perhaps Romans gain improved legion formations later in the game that focused on combined arms. Central Asian cultures could have horse archer formations, and maybe their neighbors could learn anti-horse archer formations. The user interface could simply be a button that switches between formations, like the tactics button, assuming your army qualifies for the formation. Alternatively, it could be closer to the template system in Hoi 4, where you can directly raise an army with a specific composition and purpose. With a multitude of unit types in Imperator, a Hoi 4 system could work. These examples just scratch the surface of an army formation mechanic. It could encourage a wide range of army types in a way that's accessible and transparent to the player with minimal micromanagement. It also reduces the burden on the AI, which won't have to try and keep changing tactics to match the player. Formations will also provide an opportunity for technology and military traditions to have a greater effect on how war is waged over the course of the game. I don't know if I agree with this. I'm not happy with the tactics system. I do think it needs changing. I don't think this is the solution. I would have to think more on what I do think the solution is. I just don't see this as that. No. Nope, I'm sorry. I don't really buy this one at all. Sorry. Disagree. All right, let's move on to I know for sure it's going to be a disagree already. But anyway, let's go to Later End Date by Zafplod. So, I've already been in this one. There should also come with the possibility. All right, so this is the suggestion. This is supposed to explain the suggestion. This is not what he's done. So the suggestion is he wants the date of the game to end later. He also wants, as an aside, just something extra, he wants to create an empire as Rome. You already can. You already can. The challenge would be to keep it stable. It would be, right. Okay, so let's break this down into parts. Let's talk about later end date. I don't want it. Honestly, really don't want it. The game ends in, what is it, 27, 26 BCE, or BC, whichever your preference is. And it ends there because that is when, Augustus takes over, I think. It's like the first, it's where he becomes the empire. And the reason it ends there is because of that, because Rome is no longer the Republic. It's like a solid, specific date that you can point to as this is the end of Imperator. This is the end of this game period. Just like in EU4, the end of the game is Napoleon losing, right? It's 1821, it's when he fucking loses. Or when he dies, I can't remember, one of the two. But it's basically the end of the Napoleonic Wars, is the end of EU4. 1453 is the end of CK2 and 3, because that's the fall of the Roman Empire, which was, you know, the final form of the Roman Empire, never returned in any form. There was no Third Rome, or Fourth Rome, or whatever. But yeah, that's the end of that game, because something specific happened. Something specific happened in Imperator at its end date, and it shouldn't go further. What I can see, and what I would not mind, is a system whereby there is another start date. And the start date is 27 BCE, or something, when Rome is at its zenith. It would have to be a DLC, it would have to be completely separate, it'd be like a passion project by somebody, maybe. But you would need radically new mechanics, because, yeah, the challenge would be to keep it stable. He's right on that. That would be the goal of the DLC. It'd be like the small little campaigns in Total War DLCs. Like, that kind of system is what I'm thinking of. But I can see that potentially happening because, like I said, having this large empire as Rome, you start then, you'll pretty much be able to, you know, control the situation, and you'll be the biggest power in the world, and no one can stop you. Like, where's the fun in it? I don't see this. I don't see any argument for ending the game later as being particularly valid. I mean, I see people saying, oh, we want to increase the end date of the game because we don't get to see Rome as an empire. Yes, you can. Create the fucking empire yourself. We don't get to see Christianity. Right, because Christianity came about by a very specific set of circumstances that in 99.9% of games will not occur. So it makes no fucking sense for Christianity to occur in your game. Even if you extend the end date by 400 years, it makes no fucking sense in the vast majority of games for Christianity to appear. The game is too short and I can't conquer everything in time. Get good. I don't see any arguments for this, so I respectfully disagree with you, Zapflood, and quite possibly a lot of people in my comment section who also want to increase the end date. I don't see any of your arguments as particularly good. I've heard a lot of them. I don't like them. No. Keep the end date where it is. If you want to play past the end date, just fucking do it. It's a problem that you don't get an achievement. How shocking. Who cares? Anyway, that is Senatus Populusque for 24th to the 30th of August, and yeah, interesting. I think definitely that this definitely deserved first place. It was the best suggestion. I liked the vast majority of it. This one, it wasn't a terrible suggestion, I just don't think it was the right one, and this one was awful, and yeah, I disagree completely. So that is it for the 4th Senatus Populusque meeting. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you would like to support me in the channel, then you can do so via my Patreon page. There's a link in the description. Or just likes and comments also help out. Let me know what you think of these 3 suggestions. Which one is your favorite? Do you think I'm very wrong for not wanting to increase the end date of the game? Let me know. Give me your arguments. Maybe I haven't heard them all yet, and you have a really good one. It could happen. Probably not. It could happen. Let me know. So yeah, leave your comments down below, and I will see you next week for another one. Bye-bye.